Hey, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a video on Mennonite stuff. I was answering some questions some people have been asking me about what makes a Mennonite. And I was talking about checklists and things like that, and how all Mennonites have their checklist. All churches have their checklist. And there's a couple of things that I didn't put in that video. It was 55 minutes long, and I didn't even cover half of what I wanted to cover. So I thought I would do another video, hopefully a little shorter, and to help my non-Mennonite friends understand what a Mennonite is. There are several what we call confessions of faith. I mentioned how the Church of Christ and several other groups like to say that they have no creed except the New Testament or except the Bible, and that is not the truth. That's not reality. The fact is, these checklists that I mentioned, every denomination has it. And if you want to be part of their denomination, you have to abide by their checklists. Now, we Mennonites and Amish and Hutterites, especially in the Old Order groups, the Old Colony groups, etc., the Old River Mennonites, other groups like that, and even the pietistic Anabaptist groups, such as the Old Order German Baptists, etc. We have something that uh, outsiders have called an unwritten list, an unwritten rules, and it's true. All churches have it, by the way. It's just we're better known for having it than other groups. And that unwritten list, in fact, can be found in all of our various confessions of faith. The two that I have in mind, I mentioned on the last video, one of which was the Schlechtelheim Confession, which was done by Michael Sattler in the 1630s, or pardon me, not the 1530s, in southern Germany and northern Switzerland. Those groups got together. There was another group that got together in the not pardon me, not the Swiss, but in the Frisian and the Dutch churches, called the Dordrecht Confession. This was a statement of faith that was loosely based on the Schlechthelheim Confession, which was actually over 100 years earlier. The Dordrecht Confession was actually adapted in 1680 something. I'm not exactly sure when, but it was reaffirmed in Pennsylvania by Pennsylvania Mennonites in the 1700s. Now, this Dutch Swiss schism, so to speak, are the two main branches of the Mennonite faith, of the Anabaptist faith. Um, a lot of non-Mennonites don't realize it, but Menno Simons himself was a Frisian. Uh, he was from Frisia, which is northern Holland, and the Frisians are actually linguistically and culturally first cousins to the English. A lot of people don't know that. Old Frisian and Old English are almost identical. In fact, if you look at modern Frisian, it's pretty easy for you to figure out what they're talking about. Now, our language, English, has absorbed a lot of different elements in it that Frisian did not, and Frisian remained a strictly Germanic language. All of this is just to say that there is a Frisian Mennonite church, a Dutch Mennonite church, and Northern Mennonite church, which also included the Prussian groups, which later on became, even though they were early on German speakers, that actually became part of Poland. There were Bohemian groups, there were Ukrainian groups, a large Ukrainian group that had a lot of Russian infused into their language. All of these people came to Pennsylvania. This is where I'm going with this, by the way. These groups all came to Pennsylvania, both from the South. The Amish were all Southerners, and a lot of the Mennonites were Northerners, and yet there were still Southern Mennonites, the Swiss Brethren, the Alttaufers. They never lost that distinction. And there remains to this day a difference in a lot of the wording in the churches of the southern Mennonite offshoots versus the northern Mennonite. In fact, the northern Mennonite people tend to speak the Low German, Some even speak Dutch here in the United States. Some have a lot of Prussian and Ukrainian mixed into the mix. These various different groups all adapted the Schlechtelheim Confession. Now, the Schlechtelheim Confession, as I mentioned, was the first one. And there were a few things in that I did not mention in my last video when I talked about what makes a Mennonite a Mennonite. One of the most obvious things that I did not mention that I think I should mention is the oath, the taking of oaths. And I'm going to read the Dordrecht Confession version. Again, many Mennonites will take bits and pieces from all these different Mennonite confessions. It doesn't matter to me that this was a Dutch confession versus a Swiss confession or a German confession, because they all come from the Schlechtelheim Confession, which was in fact taken out of the Bible. The Dordrecht Confession is full of scriptural references. In fact, every Mennonite confession there is, every Mennonite checklist there is, we are very careful in showing you where we get it from the Bible. The reason why I'm going to read the the Dordrecht version of this rather than Schlechtelheim is because when it was adapted by the Pennsylvania Mennonites in the 1700s, 1720s, maybe a little later, I'm not sure. I think they did a good job on being very clear about it. So that's why I'm going to read to you the swearing of the oaths. Now, here's what it says. Concerning the swearing of oaths, we believe and confess that the Lord Christ has set aside and forbidden the same to his disciples, that they should not swear at all, but yea should be yea, and nay, nay, from which we understand that all oaths, high and low, are forbidden, and instead of them we are to confirm all of our promises and obligation, yea, all our declarations and testimonies of any matter, only with our word yea, in that which is yea, and nay, in that which is nay. Yet we must always, in all matters, and with everyone, adhere to, keep, and follow, and fulfill the same, as though we had confirmed it with an oath. And if we do this, we trust that no one, not even the magistracy itself, will have just reason to lay a greater burden on our mind and conscience. So basically what that is saying is we let our yeses be yes and our no be no. We do not promise things because we know that there are times we cannot keep a promise. We just say, I'll try, and we will try. Here in Polk County, and I'm sure in other places, but I know for a fact here in Polk County, when one goes to jury selection, for example, they say you have two options. You can either swear that you will uphold the truth and the whole truth and nothing, or etc., or you will affirm that your answers will be honest to the best of your ability. That is a very important distinction, and one that actually I appreciate, because that actually is in the spirit of what I just read to you. We let our yes be yes and our no be no. We affirm, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth as best as I can. You see, because here's the thing. Mennonites are called into court. Mennonites are called for jury duty. And so long as we are not told you must swear an oath to do anything, if they word it in such a manner they say, let your yes be yes, do you affirm that you will tell the truth? Do you affirm that you'll... Affirming something is letting your yes be yes and your no be no. And this is what the Dordrecht Confession is saying that we should do. We should affirm that if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you as honest an answer as I know, because I'm going to tell you what I know. I'm not going to make something up. I'm not going to embellish. And my yes is going to be yes and my no is going to be no. This is the swearing of oaths. We do not swear oaths. Now, this gets us into a lot of trouble in a lot of places because they want us to swear. We want you to swear on the Bible. We want you to swear on this, swear on that. And our question is, why? Is not yes sufficient enough? Why are you causing me to invoke some kind of divine retribution on myself if I tell you a lie, when as a Mennonite, when as a Christian, which is as a man, my yes is yes and my no is no. Why do you want me to go beyond that? Because no man can go beyond that. Either we will tell you the truth or we will not. You just want to know, am I going to try to tell you the truth? That is the swearing of oaths. Jesus said, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, nor by earth, nor by heaven, because it is God's throne, nor by earth, for it is his footstool. Neither can you with your word make one hair white, one hair black. Neither can you enhance your stature by 1 cubit. You can't do it. So just let your yes be yes and your no be no. And we have taken that very seriously throughout the ages. Since, I say throughout the ages, since the 1520s. And that gets us into a lot of trouble. Another thing that I did not mention is military service, which also, believe it or not, goes into the swearing of oaths, because when you join the military, you are sworn to uphold the Constitution. We do not get into military service. Now, there are some Mennonites who in the 1940s did join the military. They didn't go through boot camp, but they did have a different program that they went to, and then they went into things such as medical help, medics. They went into civil engineering. They went into various non-combat roles. And because they were willing to do that, the government made provision for them to have a modified boot camp. They still had a lot of very strenuous, physical activity, but they did not have to learn how to kill people. And for some Mennonites, though, that was too much. We do not do the military. If you want to arrest me, arrest me. You see, and here's the genesis of that. The genesis of that was compulsory military service was a big issue in Europe in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, especially when the Turkish Ottoman Empire was expanding and pushing its way into many conflicts in Europe, especially in Central Europe, which Switzerland is technically part of Central Europe. Austria is part of Central Europe, technically speaking, even though culturally speaking, they're very Western Europe. Geographically speaking, they were closer to Romania, they were closer to Hungary, and the various different places that were being directly affected by the Ottoman incursions. And the fact that Mennonites refused to serve in the military and take part in killing people brought them into a severe persecution by the European authorities. Because, well, you're not going to be part of the solution, so you're part of the problem. And for this reason, as well as the infant baptism issue and several other things, we were hunted all throughout Europe. And this is what caused the great migrations into North America, because the Americans said, okay, we will not force you to join the military. We will not force you to swear oaths of loyalty to the state. And for this reason, a lot of Mennonites and Amish and Hutterites came to North America. Well, as the 1940s came and World War II came on, that changed. All of those assurances that William Penn and the various different, early on that we received, you will not have to do that. The culture started to say, well, you're just showing you're not American. You're anti-American. And there was a lot of kind of backlash against us because we continued to speak German, and there were a lot of whispers, oh, they're Nazi sympathizers. In fact, that's what got a lot of Mennonites into trouble in the Ukraine, because the Ukrainian German population, whether they were Mennonite or just ethnic Germans, received a huge amount of backlash after World War I, but especially after World War II because of Adolf Hitler. And things in this country, the patriotism movement was so strong in this country that they're continuing to do German things and be a separate group. They began to kind of get persecuted. And unlike their forefathers, they worked with the government and said, okay, we will do what you want us to do in this regard, but let's work on this so we can compromise. So here we have Mennonites joining the military. Here we have Mennonites uh, taking part in several things that in Europe they never would have done, and in fact caused them then to be hunted and to be persecuted greatly. Here in America, we never experienced the kind of persecution that we did over in Europe. Here, it was very low level. Oh, you got to be a Nazi sympathizer because you like that German stuff. You know, it's funny. To this day, people know that I speak German, and people know that I speak that I'm a Mennonite. So immediately the first thing they want to do is start talking to me about Hitler. Really? Seriously? Just because I speak German or because I'm a Mennonite? What's that got to do with Hitler? In fact, Mennonites are the polar opposite of Nazism. Um, but all of this is the swearing of oaths and military service. We do not do that. Now, having said that, there are Mennonites who will now join the military. Uh, some of us will not. I belong to the group that here's the thing, and let me preface this by saying this. I grew up in the United States military. I grew up on Air Force bases. From a very young childhood up until I was 17 years old, I lived on Air Force bases. I have seen the American military firsthand at the very basic level of a young man that grew up in that. I'm very proud of the United States military. I'm very proud of that fact that I have seen the grandeur and the might of our military. I'm not ashamed of that at all. However, when I became a Christian and when I became a Mennonite, I realized that I cannot, with a clear conscience, take part of an organization that would take the life of someone else. Now, here we go with, well, then you guys would just let our enemies take us over, and you guys would just let our enemies run us over. Wrong story. That is not an accurate portrayal of Mennonites either. The fact is, we do not participate in the military, yet at the same time, we pray for our military because we understand that our military is a very necessary organization and branch of our government. I said in the last video that we Mennonites pray for our government, and that includes the military. So though I would not join the military, but interestingly enough, I actually did try. This was before I got saved. And I wonder, had I joined the military, wonder if I would have had the same ideas that I have now. I don't know. But here's the fact. I cannot take the life of another man. I cannot take a weapon in my hand and end the life of another human being. I cannot do that. My walk with Jesus Christ prohibits me from doing that. I am not saying that a Christian cannot be in the military. I am not saying that a Christian cannot be part of that. You know, in fact, when the soldiers went to John the Baptist and said, "What shall we do?" He didn't say, "Stop being a soldier." John the Baptist never told them, "Stop being a soldier." John the Baptist said, "Do violence to no man." In other words, do not go outside of your soldier capacity and use that as an excuse to bully people. Okay? And John never said, "Don't be a soldier." The Bible does not prohibit people from being soldiers. I'm just saying my walk with Jesus Christ, my understanding of nonviolence says I cannot be a member of the armed forces because I cannot be asked to take the life of another man. I won't do it. And that is actually, well, no, it isn't, because that isn't a matter for another video or another time. That is actually very central to not taking oaths and not taking part in the military. Two things that I left out from my last video. the thing is, it's very difficult for non-Mennonites to understand that, and a lot of anger is then directed towards Mennonites because, well, suddenly you don't love our country, and suddenly you would side with our enemies. By being silent, you would side with our enemies. And the answer is no, 1,000 times no. Our allegiance is to Jesus Christ and his kingdom. Here's another thing, another aspect of that that gets us into trouble, because patriotism is such a passionate emotion. It is such a passionate movement here in the United States that leads to nationalism. Not every patriotic person is a nationalistic person, and not every nationalist is necessarily patriotic. But patriotism and nationalism does tend to go together. And because we Mennonites do not embrace nationalism, we have a tendency to not be patriotic. And we have a tendency to not be viewed as patriotic. So when these passions are strong, as they are in our country now, there's a misunderstanding of our support for our military. Well, you won't join, so you must be against it. Wrong story. We pray for our military. We pray for our government. We pray for the peace of this nation. And we understand that the sword of the government is the military. The sword of the government is our police force. And we understand that these are legitimate offices of our government to enforce common peace. Now we understand that, and we pray for that, but we will not join that because we are not called to take the lives of other people. God has never called us to kill somebody. Now, there's another branch of nationalism, and it's, there's a lot of patriotism in it that, for lack of better words, is referred to as the God and country crowd. The God and country crowd are the ones who push this issue the most, and they are the ones who tend to be against Mennonites for the reasons that I just outlaid, that we will not take part in the military. Well, then you are against God because God is for our country. Here's the way we understand it. We understand the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, where it says that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims. And this is another big thing with Mennonites. And it's big with us because we were hunted, because we were persecuted, because we were killed, because we were chased from place to place. Our property was constantly being confiscated from us. We began to hold this idea that we are searching for a heavenly country whose builder and maker is God. We are not looking for a permanent home in this world as it is now. And this is another reason why we cannot take part of nationalism. Because nationalism, in spite of the rhetoric to the contrary, embraces the idea that it's all about this world. It's all about our country. And God is on our side because we're our country and we're the best. And therefore, if you are against that idea, you're against God and you're against our country. And that is not the truth. I want you to understand that just because Mennonites do not swear oaths of loyalty to our government or our nation or this or that or the other, does not mean that we are against this nation, and it does not mean that we are against God. We are pilgrims and strangers. We do not swear oaths because Jesus Christ clearly said, do not do this. And for these outside groups to say, you must do that to show and prove that you are loyal and you're not going to side with our enemies, is just an old argument that they took up against us in Europe, and more increasingly are taking up here in the United States. No, we are not for the enemies of the United States. Just because we pray for them, just because we seek to have them convert to Jesus Christ in a peaceful manner, Just because we do not take up arms and shoot people in behalf of this or behalf of that does not mean we are against this country or any other country. The fact is, we pay our taxes. We are all about paying our taxes. In fact, Mennonite groups are not incorporated like non-Mennonite Christian churches get incorporated. Therefore, they get the whole tax exempt thing. We don't do that. We pay our taxes. Do you know why? Because when we pay our taxes and we do what every citizen is supposed to do, we do not have those strings tied to us that these tax exempt groups have. The government at any time can turn around and say to those groups, okay, now you've got to toe the line. They cannot say that to us because we have paid our taxes from the beginning. We are not tax exempt. Now, there are groups that do not pay Social Security because they do not partake in it. They do not receive Social Security. They're self-employed. They're self-sustaining. Therefore, they do not pay into Social Security. Now, here's the funny thing about that. I pay into Social Security because the company I work for pays into Social Security. How's that work? Well, here's the very simple thing with that. The government says I have to, therefore I do. Because I am not a self-sufficient farmer or self-sufficient businessman who operates his business according to this, that, or the other, because I am not a Mennonite church, I work in a non-Mennonite group. Therefore, I pay into it just like every other employee does. Okay? That's the bottom line there, and we allow for that. This has been a long video already, and a lot of this stuff is really very boring. It's not very exciting. And like I said in my last video, I seriously doubt people are going to pay a whole lot of attention to this. I'm just trying to answer people's questions as thoroughly and as honestly as I can. So to restate what I said, what I'm talking about is a couple things that make a Mennonite a Mennonite. And that is, we do not swear oaths and we do not partake in the military. Okay, again, here it's been almost 30 minutes just to tell you those two things, to explain why, and to answer known criticisms that we have for that. And I will be bringing out more videos on what makes a Mennonite a Mennonite. I hope I wasn't too boring, and I hope this adds a little illumination. Okay, if you have any questions, hey, just write your questions down. You know, if you comment on my video and you have a question that I can further illuminate you on, just let me know. Or when you see me face to face. These questions that I'm answering now on what makes a Mennonite is an answer to a question a friend has asked me face to face. So again, those of you who don't see me face to face and you want to know, ask me. Put it on Facebook here. Email me. Whatever. All right. We'll talk to you later.